The 2000s, the dawn of a new millennium. A decade that began with the Y2K scare and was forever changed with the rise of terrorism and the global war that followed. Technology surged forward once again. Music went digital with the iPod, phones got smarter, the internet became something we carried in our pockets, and a little video sharing site became a global phenomenon. Video game consoles evolved with it. Consoles became interconnected. Online play went from an experiment to an expectation. And gaming was no longer a solitary experience, it was global. This was the decade where one major console manufacturer exited the industry, and a new powerhouse was born, reshaping the future of gaming forever. Welcome to the history of early 2000s video game consoles. The story of the PlayStation 2 starts shortly after the launch of the original PlayStation in 1994. Ken Kutaragi, the father of the PlayStation, already saw the need to start developing the next generation of system to stay ahead of the competition. Sony wanted to develop a new system that would not only play the new generation of games, but also be fully backward compatible to the original PlayStation. The only system that had accomplished that up until this point was the Atari 7800, being fully backward compatible to the 2600. Also, development of the graphics rendering chip would be designed in-house. However, Sony wanted to see their options in case their chip didn't work out. They worked with a few different companies to design a new graphics rendering chip. The most popular of these companies was Argonaut Games, which had been working with Nintendo since the NES days, and had created the Super FX chip for use in the SNES system. After several designs were submitted, Sony decided to go with their own in-house design, which became the graphics synthesizer chip. With help of Toshiba, Sony also designed the CPU for the system called the Emotion Engine. Work continued on the development through the mid-90s. Sony ultimately decided to put a new technology into the system, the newly designed DVD-ROM drive. This would not only allow the user to view DVDs, but also have games on DVD format, which would increase the amount of space for games on the disc by tenfold, making better quality games with amazing graphic capabilities. To top it off, Sony also decided to make the system able to connect to the internet via a 56K modem or high-speed broadband, and to have a hard drive for games that would support it. This would be accomplished with an add-on accessory that mounted on the back of the PS2 via the expansion slot called the PS2 Network Adapter. The design of the PS2 case was inspired by Atari. Ken Kutaragi was a fan of Atari and wanted something in the design that would bring back the nostalgic feeling from the old-school Atari systems. He wanted to design a system with fins like the original 2600, but it seems Sony took it a step further. Towards the end of the Atari's computer lifecycle, they were going to release a new ST computer named the Falcon Microbox. However, this was canceled as the company went into bankruptcy and never saw the light of day. The case design, however, looked like the case that was designed for the PS2. The two systems look almost identical besides their color. By mid-1997, info was leaked to the press about the new system, and its features such as having a DVD-ROM drive and being backwards compatible to the PS1. However, Sony denied that they were working on a new system at all. It was almost a full 2 years after this, in March of 1999, that Sony officially announced that they were making a new PlayStation and told the world about its features. In September of 1999, Sega released the Dreamcast. It had a successful launch, selling more than 500,000 units in the first 2 weeks. Sony unveiled a new PS2 at the Tokyo Game Show on September 20th. 2 games were shown, the new Gran Turismo and Tekken Tag Tournament, to the amazement of the crowd. Once info about the new PlayStation came out, gamers were hesitant to buy the Dreamcast because the PS2 would have a DVD-ROM drive, which at the time was a huge selling point. The PS2 launched in March of 2000 in Japan, October in North America, and November in Europe. The launch was wildly successful. Sony sold more than 1.4 million units by the end of March in Japan, selling out of its entire inventory. More units were made for the North American and European launch, but they too were soon sold out. This led to the first time a video game system was being sold on eBay for several times the amount of the actual MSRP. Production of the system ramped up, and eventually there were ample supplies of the PS2. Also, Sony made better dev systems for third-party developers, making it easier for them to program games for the system. This coupled with the fact that the entire PS2 system was selling for equal or less than a standalone DVD player, this was a game changer at the time. Sales of the system soared. By the end of 2000, Sony had created such a financial nightmare for Sega, they decided to pull the plug on the Dreamcast and console production altogether by March of 2001. Although Sega was no longer a competitor, 2 new video game systems were released in 2001, the Nintendo GameCube and Microsoft's Xbox, both of which were more powerful than the PS2, but the GameCube lacked DVD playback and the Xbox needed an add-on remote control sensor to make DVD playback possible. This made the PS2 the go-to system if you wanted the ability to play DVDs as well as games. Also, with its ability to play PS1 games, made it the most popular system of the generation. They also secured exclusive licenses for games such as Grand Theft Auto and Metal Gear, making the system even more sought after. The PS2 really didn't get into online gaming until the launch of Microsoft's Xbox Live. Sony knew they had to get into the online realm to stay competitive. Unlike Microsoft that controlled the servers that the games were hosted on, Sony made the developer of the game run the servers for their games on the PS2. This kept playing online free to the player, unlike Xbox Live, which was a paid service. This made the PS2 more tempting to people who wanted to play online and on the cheap. During the PS2 production, Sony released another unique PS2 system called the PSX in Japan in 2003. It was a PS2 with a built-in DVR. It had up to a 250 gigabyte hard drive installed to record TV from either VHF or a cable tuner. It was also the first PlayStation to use Sony's XMB or cross-media bar graphics user interface that the PSP and the PS3 eventually had. By the end of 2003, the PS2 was a hit, already selling millions of units over what the competition was selling. They wanted to make more profits, so they followed what Atari had done years before and started the design of a cost-reduced version of the PS2. In September of 2004, Sony released the PS2 Slim, a much smaller PS2 that included a top-loading drive, no hard drive support, and had a built-in modem. Also by this time, hacking the system was becoming popular with mod chips, and the new Slim version implemented protections against known mod chips at the time. The PS2 continued to be produced until 2013, when it was finally discontinued worldwide. The last game, Pro Evolution Soccer 2014, being released on November 8, 2013 in the UK. The PS2 launched in 2000 and was discontinued in 2013, giving the system a 13-year lifespan and selling over 155 million units, making it the best-selling video game console ever produced to this day, and bringing the DVD format to homes worldwide.
Nintendo GameCube.
The story of the Nintendo GameCube starts in 1996. The N64 had just launched and Nintendo started development of a new console they named the N2000. In 1997, a new company called Ardex was created as a spin-off of SGI, the company that helped Nintendo develop the N64. As many as 20 engineers from SGI came to Ardex, which was led by Wei Yin. He was head of Nintendo operations for SGI and led Project Reality that eventually became the N64. Starting in May of 1998, Ardex partnered with Nintendo to design the system logic and graphics processors for the new console. The GPU was codenamed Flipper. Also around this time, Nintendo partnered with IBM to create the CPU for the system, codenamed Gecko, and with Panasonic to create the system drive mechanism. It was at this time that the name of the project was changed from the N2000 to StarCube, then to Nintendo Advance. In May of 1999, the console was first announced with another new codename, Project Dolphin. After this, Nintendo started supplying development kits to third-party developers. In April of 2000, Ardex was acquired by ATI. Although the Flipper GPU was already finished by Ardex, this is why you see the ATI logo on the front of the GameCube. After the acquisition, ATI stated that they were now a major supplier of graphics chips for the game console market and boasted about how they were the top dog of the 128-bit architecture. Also in development at this time was a motion controller that was supposed to be used with the system. Nintendo had patented the idea, but unfortunately the final design was not ready for the launch of the console, and it was postponed until their next console, the Wii. A lot of the games that were being developed for the N64 were postponed and ported over to the Dolphin as launch titles. The last first-party game released on the N64 was in May of 2001, 6 months before the launch of the Dolphin. It was also at this time that the console's name was changed once again, and for the final time, to the GameCube. On May 21, 2001, it was revealed at E3 at a price of $199.99, which was $100 less than either the PS2 or the Xbox when they released. The GameCube launched in Japan on September 14, 2001, and in North America on November 18, 2001. In Japan, 300,000 of the 450,000 units that were made sold in the first 3 days, and in North America, over 600,000 units were sold by December of 2001. Nintendo thought they had a hit on their hands. They predicted 50 million units sold by 2005. But that wasn't the case. Only 22 million units were sold by the end of 2005. This is because it lacked a true DVD player like its competition. The games were marketed towards kids, and most older gamers saw it as toyish and did not do well with the competing Xbox and PS2. In fact, it is the third worst selling console that Nintendo ever made, only the Virtual Boy and the Wii U being worst sellers. With the Wii being launched in 2006, Nintendo announced that the GameCube would be discontinued in February of 2007. The last official game, Madden NFL 2008, being released on August 14, 2007. The Nintendo GameCube had a 6-year lifespan from 2001 to 2007, selling over 22 million units and being Nintendo's third worst selling console. The story of the Xbox starts in the late 1990s. Microsoft had found success in the PC gaming market. with titles such as Flight Simulator and Age of Empires using the DirectX API. They saw the success Sony was having with the PlayStation and wanted in on the action. Sony had announced the upcoming console, the PlayStation 2, and discussed how the game console would take over the PC market in the next few years for games and internet connectivity. This worried Bill Gates as he saw it as direct competition to Microsoft's PC home market. Sega had worked with Microsoft and used a version of Windows CE to develop games on the Dreamcast. Microsoft contacted Sony to try to work a deal with them to develop the software to program games on the PS2, just as they had done with Sega. Sony refused the offer, deciding to develop their own dev system. Bill Gates now wanted to get into the game console market to directly compete with Sony. Gates contacted Hiroshi Yamauchi to try to acquire Nintendo. Yamauchi adamantly declined. Around this time, 4 Microsoft DirectX engineers, Kevin Batchis, Seamus Blackley, Ted Hayes, and Otto Burks, they started discussing ideas for a new game console that would work off the DirectX technology. The project was codenamed Midway to represent the Japanese defeat to American forces at Midway Island during World War II, showing Microsoft's ambition to defeat Sony in the console market. In March of 1999, the DirectX team had their first development meeting about the new console. They decided it should run off a dumbed-down version of Windows 2000 and DirectX 8.1. They wanted it built from PC parts to make it even easier to port games over from the PC to the new console. Microsoft had acquired WebTV, and it put it on the team to develop the new console as well. The DirectX team and the WebTV team just didn't agree on what the console should be. The WebTV group wanted it to run off Windows CE and the hardware to be created from the ground up instead of using PC hardware. This came to a head in a meeting of May of 1999. Both teams pitched their idea. The DirectX team emphasized the use of PC hardware, a hard drive, and an Ethernet port for internet connectivity, while the WebTV group wanted a system designed from the ground up using dial-up internet. Gates ultimately decided to go with the DirectX team's idea, mainly because of its use of broadband internet for the upcoming Xbox Live. Microsoft initially wanted a third party to manufacture the consoles, but after more research was done, this was not going to be feasible and they would have to manufacture the consoles themselves. That drove the cost up more than they wanted. Bill Gates was furious about this, but after being reminded that he was going to be competing with the top dog in the industry, Sony, Gates decided to move forward with the project, no matter the cost. They began prototyping the console using Dell computer parts and an AMD processor, but in the final design, an Intel processor was used instead without AMD's knowledge. In the year 2000, they were coming up with a name for the console. They wanted it to show the use of DirectX. Several names were thrown around, including Direct Xbox, XXXbox, Direct XXXbox. The Direct Xbox name was shortened to Xbox, and this is the name that was ultimately chosen. Now they had to come up with a controller. Microsoft contacted Sony's supplier on the controllers, Mitsumi Electric, to use a design similar to the PlayStation's folded circuit design that was compact. Unfortunately for Microsoft, Mitsumi was loyal to Sony and declined to work with Microsoft. They designed their own controller with a larger circuit board. This is the reason that the original controller was so large. Later, they developed a smaller, more compact design known as the Controller S. Now Microsoft just needed someone to manufacture the console for them. They contracted with Flextronics to produce the Xbox. They even built a new factory in Mexico for the production. The early production models were prone to failure, with about a 25% failure rate. This was corrected in later revisions. Gates himself leaked info about the project in an interview in 1999, stating he wanted the console to be the platform of choice for the best and most creative game developers in the world. In 2000, Gates was a keynote speaker at the Game Developers Conference and showed an early prototype of the system. Also during this time, Microsoft tried to acquire many different developers, such as Electronic Arts, Nintendo, Square Enix, and Midway, without any success. But they were successful in acquiring Blessitha Game Studios, Tecmo, and Bungie, which brought the first exclusive titles to the Xbox: The Elder Scrolls III, Morrowind, Dead or Alive 3, and Halo. The Xbox was officially announced on January 3, 2001 at the Winter CES show, with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Bill Gates unveiling it. The system was launched on November 15, 2001, with the first 1,000 units shipped to the Toys R Us store in Times Square, New York, with Bill Gates greeting people who bought it. Sales of the unit were initially strong, selling more than 1 million units in the first 3 weeks. Sales of the unit continued to be strong, selling more than 15 million units by July of 2004. However, things were not all good for Microsoft. Due to the high cost of manufacturing, they were losing money on every console they made. The initial sale price was $299, but the unit cost $425 each to make. Over the course of its lifespan, the console cost Microsoft over $4 billion in losses, but it was a good competitor to Sony and Nintendo, and with Microsoft's new exclusive titles being profitable, Gates ultimately decided to continue in the console market and start to develop the next generation, the Xbox 360. The Xbox 360 was announced on MTV in May of 2005 and released in November of the same year. NVIDIA ceased production of the GPUs in August of 2005. The Xbox was discontinued in 2006. Although games were still being made for it until August of 2008, with Madden 09 being its last. Xbox Live support ended in April of 2010. The Xbox had a 5-year lifespan, from 2001 until 2006, selling more than 24 million units and being Microsoft's first game console.